On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, I talk with my buddy Sam Kabert from SwagWorx, and he talks about what it's like to be a soul seeker. Hey there, and welcome to a brand new edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and joining me today is a repeat guest and a super good friend of mine. He's the creative director at SwagWorx, Sam Kabert. Thanks for coming back, man.
What up, Kirby? Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's always a great time talking with you and catching up. So Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I want to dive right in. You've been recently talking about like a new, instead of work-life balance, you were talking about something called soul-life balance. So can you dig into that? Talk about what you mean by that and why it matters.
Right. So, I think a lot of us really believe in work-life balance, right? And growing up, just everything, I've always been a huge proponent of work-life balance. And we're going to get into this later, but I had this epiphany over a series of time that the work-life balance is broken. And most of all, it's because work, to me at least, should be and I don't like the word should, but work is a component of life, right? So if we're taking work-life balance, we're really looking at as 50%, maybe not 50%, but work and life. But work is just a component of life. And we're going to get a little deep here.
I love it.
That's what this whole thing is about, right? It's about going below the surface. And suicide rate in the US alone is at the highest it's been. I've had friends that I've lost to suicide. I've seen it firsthand in college, and I've had other mental illness affect my family and myself, right? And it's a big deal. At a time when we have everything at our fingertips, like look at cell phones, we have a computer in our pocket. But that's also the other bad part, because we're so ingrained with technology, right? I'm going on a tangent, but the point is we're losing track of spirituality, right? So on the Eastern side of the world, there's an abundance of spirituality. And on the Western side, we have materialistic lifestyles. So it's kind of like finding a balance between those of materialistic and spiritual, right? So I feel like we're getting out of touch with our souls, right? Like with actually living. We get in this just grind, and we set these goals and just all of this, and we forget about what truly matters to us. So I think it's important, whether it be meditation, it be yoga, it be swimming, running, anything that, gets you feeding your soul, where you're just like, outside of work and it's something sacred, right? That's what we should be focusing on, soul life balance. And work is just a component of life, That's kind of the premise of soul life balance.
Yeah, that's super. I think that's super interesting. I think one of those things that you're reminded, I heard a quote a long time ago that said, a lot of people spend their entire lives climbing the corporate ladder, and when they get to the top, they realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. And it reminds me of that we need to be reminded of what we're really trying to chase. So this is sort of a different path for you. You and I have known each other for a couple of years. So what caused this kind of epiphany that you talked about?
Yeah, depression, right? On the outside, everyone looks at me, and I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people will look and be like, how are you able to do so much? Or that's amazing you do so much. Or, just for people that aren't familiar with my story, just quickly, I got into content. I wrote 3 books in a year. I launched a podcast, turned it into a media company with several other podcasts. We have a big annual event as well, a YouTube show, food show, and I manage all this on top of my business, right? So it's a lot of things to juggle. And I just received the 40 Under 40 nomination or award through the Silicon Valley Business Journal. So on the outside, I've been chasing success, trying to improve this chip on my shoulder as this small guy, and coming from the office supply industry, and then, promotional products, like living in Silicon Valley, no one cares about that, right? So just this chip on my shoulder that I needed to, prove myself in another way. And as I get all these accolades, it's like that classic entrepreneur thing, you start to find success, and it's like, why am I unhappy? Right? Like
Yeah.
I'm achieving all these goals. So about a year ago, a friend turned me on to ayahuasca. That's a plant medicine from the Amazon. It's a psychedelic, and it gets you in touch with your soul. It's literally a plant, and it can take you to another realm. And I was always curious, but with this last round of depression in February, March of 2019, it was like, okay, this is really time to do it. And that changed my life. It just opened up so many things. And within 2 weeks after that, I did a psilocybin, that's magic mushrooms. I did a retreat with those. I mean, I've done mushrooms throughout my life, recreationally with friends, whatever. But doing it for healing, because this isn't for fun, this is for healing, doing ayahuasca and doing a mushroom retreat. Doing it for healing is a totally different thing. It's not just like, oh, I'm having fun with, drinking some beers, that type of thing when you drink beers recreationally or whatever. This is for healing, and it's a totally different setting. And it really opened up my eyes to why I'm depressed. And it's because I'm focusing so much on work-life balance. I'm focusing so much on work, and I'm focusing so much on these accolades, and I'm not living. Like, I mean, I could go on, but I actually moved to Santa Cruz outside of Silicon Valley. It's about a hour away, right by the ocean. And I've always been a boater, a wakeboarder. I've been stand-up paddleboarding, adventures outdoors, and living in Silicon Valley for the past 8 years. I did none of that really, and didn't know camping or anything. Just like grind. So now it's kind of like, it's time to actually live. And I have my business on, I don't want to say autopilot, but I have a good thing going. So it's a good time for me to spread the message and help others.
So I'm going off script a little bit, but how are you? I mean, are you feeling more happy?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think we all, there's a balance, right? And it's hard to find. I still know there's something underlying that's not right. And it's a journey, right, for all of us. And I actually feel like a lot of us, and myself included, like I kind of knew I was unhappy, but I was like, I don't want to address that because that's a lot of work, right? Right, and you can be pretty good with not addressing how you really feel and just getting caught up in emails or work and putting your attention in somewhere else, and not being in touch with how you really feel, which is totally fine. That's like totally fine if it works for you. But for me, like I'm the deep diver, like I'm going all in on the spiritual path, and it's very gratifying. At the same time, I feel like there's some regression happening, going back to my old ways. So it's definitely a balance and try and maneuver my way through it. But that's life, man, right?
It is. And I really appreciate your candor and your transparency on this, because I think a lot of people struggle with this. I mean, people who are achievers, I think that's totally true, that you get to the finish line, and if what you were looking for is the finish line, then you get to the finish line and you're like, oh, was this it? Is this...
So,
yeah.
Quick story, if you don't mind. We're actually using Skype. A number of years back, I had a meeting with a client called Bring Change to Mind. It's Glenn Close's nonprofit, and it's all about raising awareness for mental health. Well, they introduced me to one of their board members, and we got coffee, and her daughter was like drawing on, the table next to us, and she's telling me this story about how her husband was C-level at Skype. I don't remember the position, but he actually walked in front of the Caltrain train one day and let the train, we don't go there. So
yeah,
there's a lot of this in the world, whether it be in tech and business or just depression. It's something we really need to address, and it's very important. It's serious, and just the more people, the more awareness we have, and more people being transparent and open. Like, it's okay to talk about your feelings, especially as men, right? Like, yes. We're not supposed to be in touch with our feelings, right? So it's just like, I think it's one of those things where if I start doing it, then it makes someone else feel more comfortable, and then it's just a trickle down effect, right? Because that from others, and it's like pay it forward almost. So
Well, and I think that your point about we've all been affected, right?
right.
So, no, I appreciate your talking about it. So that's good. So it's interesting to me that you said, "Look, I'm still doing. Like, I'm going on this journey," and then you do still manage your business and your podcasts and your blogs. So how are you doing that? And is it like sucking you dry? Is it still providing you joy? How's that going?
So this is probably counterintuitive, but if anything, the content side sucks me dry. The business side pretty much runs itself. The promotional product, that's how I make money. That pretty much runs itself. I work less than 4 hours a day, easy, on promotional products, and my sales go up every year. But I'm working on a new project called Soul Seeker, and I'm going all out on this content. I'm doing it the right way. In the past, everything else I've done, not that I was like half-assed, but I'm doing it very professional and like everything you're supposed to do. So I've been slow to launch, and I'm being kind of a perfectionist. So that's kind of sucking me dry. But it's supposed to be the passion, right? So that's kind of funny. But managing my time, to answer your question, because I answered that, it's virtual assistants. A lot of people know me as the VA guy or whatever, but I put systems in place for both my content and my business, where I'm outsourcing it to mercenaries. That's what I call them, mercenary specialists in certain fields, rather than having employees. And it's more cost efficient, and I have specialists, and VAs really, I could not do what I'm doing without VAs. None of it. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, you've answered more than my 3 questions even. And seriously, I really do appreciate you taking the time. And then also just your candor, like you said, to address the feelings question. And that's really cool of you to do. So you've answered my questions. Do you have a question for me?
I'm struggling, as always, to come up with the question for you, because I always have questions for you. But I'm going to come up with one like on the spot, because I'm putting you on the spot. So I know, like, you and I, awesome friends. You know what I mean? And we don't talk that much, but when we do, it's awesome. What do you truly feel about this new path that I'm going down? Like, how do you truly, like, what do you think are the positives, the negatives, the strengths, the weaknesses? What is your gut feeling?
I think my gut feeling is that the idea of talking about mental health is incredibly important. And if you're willing to put yourself out there in that way, I think it's important, and I think it's brave. I think that the conversation about psychedelics is uncomfortable for me, and it's new to me. You know me well enough to know that I'm blissfully naive when it comes to any of that. That being said, I think there is science to back it up. I've read enough about it to understand that. I guess the third piece is that you are very self-deprecating when it comes to this. Even in our conversations before this, you talked about how you were becoming more of a hippie, or you were, talking more radical. From my perspective, if this is your path, own it. Don't put yourself down about it. I think it is a thing that, back to my first point, I think it's a super important topic that luckily I think we're talking about more, but only because it's been such a huge problem. So my initial reaction is I think it's good and it's important. And one of the things I love about you is that you're willing to share the journey. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you talking about it, because this is your content, and that's putting yourself out on a limb, talking about psychedelics too. So I appreciate that. And it is, there's a lot of TED Talks, a lot of therapists are using it, and it's actually psilocybin's been decriminalized in Oakland. We're making good traction, and it's not like it's a Schedule I drug, like the same as, like, say, I don't know, coke or meth or whatever, heroin, any of that, which those are all made in the lab. These are plants, and these are ancient things that we've used. And even if you Google like ayahuasca negatives, like, it's very hard to find like bad stories, like truly bad. So anyways, Thank you again. Really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you.
Dude, this has been fun, and we will have to do it again sometime, okay?
Down. Thanks, Kirby.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time.